Hello and welcome to ArtSwarm episode 16. ArtSwarm is an arts video program where we encourage people to create new video and new audio pieces on a particular theme and then showcase them to the world. So everything you see in ArtSwarm is a world premiere, and it's also something creative and innovative that you won't have seen or even possibly imagined before. This week's theme is the 1920s, a very interesting decade for inspiration. We had American Prohibition, the gangster era, the Jazz Age, decadence. We're going to begin with my contribution, which is simply called Twenties, and it's a poem and a video poem all about decadence and perhaps awaiting a storm.
In sleep between the wars, in a fog of sulphur slumber, we float, breath heavy with ethanol and forget. Mind is free, like petrol fumes, like a memory of irrational hatred, of manipulation by the media. We drown in happy gratitude. We better fellows with half minds drift, scarred by an unknown pox. Life is free, like petrol fumes, like a memory of an imperial navy, and so white teeth, so white. Let's dance the Charleston, let's drink champagne, let's spend the night together, let's enjoy the river of gold.
And now we present a sound piece by Andrew Williams, a really innovative and brilliant piece of work actually. It's a very eerie and strange piece of music, and actually the notes track the value of the New York Stock Exchange month by month throughout the decade of the 1920s. You can hear the note gradually ascending, and it adds a sense of frenicity to the entire video, and then it plunges right at the end for the stock market crash in October 1929. The whole video the music is accompanied by a video of the stock exchange done by the American government to educate people about stocks and shares. That video is from the 1950s, but I think it works quite well with this particular piece. And now a montage of memories and scenes from the 1920s. There's now a complex sound piece by Lavinia Murray. The visionaries have run out of hair, is what the seance gatherers say in this particular piece. It's all about a child who bungee jumps from heaven, and her name is the 1920s. She bungee jumps over a 1920s cemetery, and there's a 1920s cityscape in the background. Perhaps she is bungee jumping over her own grave.
The visionaries are running out of hair. The visionaries are running out of hair. The legs are but a blur. They look just like wild fur. The visionaries are running out of hair. The visionaries are running out of hair. The visionaries are running out of hair. The corner. The devil frying gloves in the corner. Is the devil frying gloves in the corner? Is the devil frying gloves? And there's a lion in a dice where the devil frying gloves in the corner. Is the devil in the corner? There's a lion in a dice in the bush red of cloud. Right, gloves in the It was when in the corner. Looked at his flat there's a lion in a dice lodge, and the night sky shines through the devil bright gloves in the corner. Then is the devil in the corner. No, it's red of cloud. And there's a lion in a dice that's punched. Something bright gloves in the corner. Is the devil and something to do with this bush. But
It was when he opened his eyes, someone stared at him.
Amber's something to do with his misery and may his head. Dun nut.
So a shred of cloud.
Something to do.
He looked at his eyes, his cloud sat in.
What's going on? The trap was too small for them.
Evelyn sat down.
Dun nut. What is too small for your head? You don't. That's what I cobwebs are well.
Something to do with his bedroom having been
Cobwebs.
punched.
A field of
Something
rain
to do with his bedroom
punched.
Oh yes, it was something to do with
The
his
hand
bedroom.
rode his rug across the floor, across the field.
Something to do with his
Reggie was
bedroom.
one being
Hadn't been
who'd considered having children, but who
A
already
man
had.
lived on misery and mayhem. A man whose hood was too small for his head. Dun dun nut. That's right. Your hood is too small for
Would be
your head.
able to offer
That's what I
across
think.
the field, harvested
Oh, cobwebs are welcome.
but there would consider enough remember this sufficient to occupy his life.
Attracted by the hours.
It's a rotten inconvenience, said Reginald Beats. Reginald spoke his name, his first name. Will be child take it away, I'll get it off
Here there
the
were a
floor.
couple of
What's the
names
case?
in the dust.
What you don't want time's up. The child
The field of leaves.
man is red.
Man.
That's not
His
good.
hands. The road his
Said Reginald Beats.
rug.
From the little I know, it's what I know. We're being put upon ourselves.
But considered having children.
Now the
but
phone's
already had
ringing.
enough
Got a big
sufficient to occupy his life.
Still a man with balls for hands rode his rug. A hidden tread. I'd call that neglect. What they do get up to. From the little I know, it's what I know.
But then,
What do you mean, Sheeky? This is the 1920s. The 1920s, this is what this child says it's called. It's called the 1920s. This is
remember, this is the 1920s. That's not my child. Inconvenience. Said
A hidden
Regimental
tread got
Leagues.
too frightened.
Regimental League is named his
1920s.
first
The
name.
1920s. I would.
We're being put upon our
What is
first
the 1920s? The 1920s. This is the 1920s. The 1920s. This is what this child says it's called.
Still the man with balls for hands rode his rug across the little harvesting plain.
What else can
From the little I know, it's what they do get up to. From the little I know, it's what I
The
know.
1920s. The 1920s. The 1920s.
That's what they do. And now the phone's ringing. Trapped in cobwebs.
A shred of cloud and cool on top of
Crow, a tiny one. The shape of it. I'd call that neglect.
looked at his somewhere large and pickled.
1920s. The 1920s, this is what this child says it's called. Called the 1920s.
Amber is punished. Something.
The 1920s. The
Having been
1920s.
Hello and welcome to ArtSwarm, John Lindley.
Thank you.
So you're the ex-Cheshire Poet Laureate. How did you get into poetry from the beginning? Have you always written as a child? And
Well, I guess that English was the only subject I excelled, if I can use that word, at school, really, other than sport I liked. And it was the one that stuck with me, I think. I've always been attracted to words and poetry quite early, I think, 12, 13. And then on through my teens, I started writing at more regular rate. And
wow, did you write stories as well?
I did write stories when I was at school, but it's not something I've continued. My only other writing now is purely if I write articles about anything like rock music or anything like that, but it's purely poetry now.
Yeah, it seems that music and sort of like the 1950s and films are very important in your life and work as a poet as well. You seem to refer to these things quite a lot.
Yeah, as far as the film goes, because I have got a great interest in cinema, really from the birth of cinema, and still like present day cinema, but specifically the decades of the 30s and 40s. But I'm not quite sure why that featured, maybe because of the visual element that creeps into the poetry, because I've other hobbies, pastimes, interests, whatever, they almost never feed into the poetry, but that did in a bigger way, and led to a complete collection that I did about cinema poems.
Yeah, that's true. So at what point did you think, I want to do poetry seriously? Because you've had several collections. It must have at some point become an obsession or a really important desire to do it full time, or
I think I always wanted to be a writer of some kind, and then the poetry came along. It never seemed sustainable as a living, and then and I had a long after a couple of self-published pamphlets, had a long period with what I can only be termed as writer's block, about 5 or 6 years, and then got back into poetry. It was then that my first collection was published, and then as peripheral things, I say peripheral, but the meat and drink for me, like workshops started to come along. There seemed to be an opportunity to maybe go full time, which I did, when I was 50.
Well, that's really interesting. Well, you're here also to talk about a new collection you've got called Love and Crossbones. So how did that come about?
Well, Love and Crossbones, I certainly wasn't thinking of a collection this year, because I brought out a CD of songs that I'd written over the years, and so I certainly didn't expect to have a collection come out in the same year. But I entered a poetry collection competition with SPM Publications in London, international competition, was shortlisted and fortunate that I came third in it, and the first 3 were published. So heard about that earlier in the year. It's been a long time coming, but it's here.
And also there are many poems in there that have won awards as well. So I guess, was the award for one particular poem the SPM competition, or did you have lots of poems?
No, there are poems in there that have either won competitions or been placed and so on. But that particular thing from SPM was a poetry collection competition. So it was the business of sending 20 poems, and then they shortlisted from that who they wanted to send full collections.
It's really exciting, because there's a huge variety of poems in there as well.
Thank you.
Well, you're about to read for us on ArtSwarm one of the poems entitled Fay Ray. It sort of fits with our 1920s theme, but as you said, it was sort of 1933, I think, King Kong, but it's the closest thing.
Yes.
So, well, we look forward to that. And where can people find the book? They can find it on Amazon.
It's on Amazon. It's from SPM Publications in London. It's from me. If people want to check out my website, if you just put John Lindley Poet, you'll find my website. Different ways of getting it. Yeah.
Brilliant. And thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
There's no one today quite like Fay Ray. Once Kong had delicately stripped her with a finger until her ripped dress slipped towards censorship, I've thought how careful one would need to be, if one were he, not to bruise that near naked hip, cut that lip with a fingernail the size of a spade. Oh, How she writhed in her tininess, clinging on to her leather trapeze when only her scream was huge, the petals of her torn white dress falling soundless as snow. And one could see why he was smitten, encountering the only delicious treat he'd ever seen and chosen not to eat. All other love at first sights surely pale against this hairy courtier's for his pale prize. His eyes near as wide as his smile, he perched and worshipped her in the church of his hand, on the altar of his palm. No sacrificial lamb to the slaughter, but a pearl of flesh, a working miniature, the tiny mechanism of her crooked arm no longer shielding her eyes from his glare, and the only movement, the insects, through the darkest jungles of his soft fur. Well, all's well that ends well, goes the play, but unrequited love rarely does. It stays unrequited, and nothing slakes its heartache but a stammer of blood as from the bullets from a biplane, and the fall, not from a state of grace, but from a man-made rock to a harder place. And Fay Wray? She remains just a scream away in the house of the head on the street, horizontal. And in my horizontal dreaming head, decades and decades away, she lays her pretty projected cheek on my chest, a chest unriddled by bullets, unriddled by doubts as to who would hold the upper hand for her hand, me or Kong.
And now a piece from Jaynie Jones. This features one of her paintings and it's about boats that disappeared in 1900. And now a piece from Claire Bassi, which has a children's workshop. It features work by two 1920s artists, Kurt Schwitters and Karel Tiege from Czechoslovakia. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. In the workshop, children are making a collage from work by both artists. For my second piece, I suddenly remembered that I wrote a song years ago, 14 years ago actually, in 2004, that was inspired by jazz age music. It was very bouncy and deliberately sort of 20 sounding, and I suddenly thought, well, I might as well try and record it for ArtSwarm. I managed to do the entire thing in 3 hours, so it's extremely rough around the edges, but in a way that indicates the spirit of ArtSwarm. It's all about just having a go and trying something that's original, that you've not thought of before, that pushes yourself. So I hope you enjoy this. It's called He Liked to Keep It Simple. It was the year of the cat in Singapore where it's at. He was a guy with a stash, he had a gun and a tash. The girls loved him, he was a kingpin. He liked to keep it simple when he killed. The Diamond Club is champagne, the Scarlet Girls are aflame. And Tony G and the Ring are eating everything. And then a night out became a wipeout. He liked to keep it simple when he killed. Inside a shed of the dogs, it was 11 o'clock. The sirens lit up the place and a familiar face. And soon a first dance became a last chance. Oh well, at least he skipped the slammer. He was always gonna end up being killed. And now we have a poem/song by Deborah Edgeley, which is inspired by Dorothy Parker and is all about women's liberation and letting loose, and in a way a bit of a party atmosphere, and it's got a bit of an anything goes Cole Porter sort of feeling to it. Hope you enjoy this.
Let's ankle. Climb out of their bodies. Women are a-changing. Crystal charisma. Climb out of their bodies. We are not grandma. Speed and control to a brighter future. Fur coat flinger. Damn, not fiddly-dee. We are not grandma. Gatsby gals. Jazz and elders. Peachy lipstick purses. Sparkle, you slay me. Shimmy, shimmy, shimmy. Climb out of their bodies. Baloney, who you calling a buck-eyed Betty? Damn, not fiddly-dee. We are not our grandma. We are not our grandma. Crystal charisma. Women are a-changing. Climb out of their bodies. Climb out of their bodies. Let's ankle. Let's ankle. Fur coat flinger. Damn, not fiddly-dee. We are not our grandma. Climb out of their bodies. Shimmy, 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 shake. Jazzy's elder. There goes Jazzy's elder. Fur coat flinger. Climb out of their bodies. Crystal charisma. Let's ankle. Fur coat flinger. We are not grandma. Peachy lipstick purses sparkle. You slay me. Baloney, who you calling a buck-eyed Betty? Gatsby gals. Speed and control to a brighter future. Speed and control to a brighter future.
And that's it for episode 16 of ArtSwarm. Thank you to my special guest, John Lindley. I've been Mark Sheeky, and you can keep track of ArtSwarm and see all our new uploads by following our Twitter feed at ArtSwarm TV. And if you'd like to create something for the programme, you can visit my website, marksheeky.com/artswarm.php, to see all the terms and conditions and ways that you can send me things, because the whole point of this programme is it's made by you, it's made by everybody, and it's new and experimental. That's what's so good about it. The theme for the next show is Iron, which is very rich for creativity. I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time to see what everybody comes up with. Bye.